coming back to that theme of people having insulin resistance for a number of years and then not knowing it, it gets me thinking about the fact that for some people at least, probably the majority, and you could elaborate on that, they do tend to get overweight and obese as their metabolic health degrades and they become insulin resistant. But why is it for a group of people, they maintain a quote unquote healthy weight, but yet their metabolism is suffering underneath?
Yeah, the mechanism isn't well known. I mean, you could just kind of put it into the category of genetics. You're just given that metabolism, but certainly there's some people who develop metabolic issues at different weights than other people, handling carbs differently. The construct that has been helpful for me is just thinking of it called the personal fat threshold, where if you are someone who makes fat from that extra sugar really well, so your liver is cranking out the sugar goes into fat in the liver and in the fat cells, and the fat from the liver is being sent out to the cells, and you're processing the sugar and making insulin from that, then you're not going to develop high blood sugar or diabetes. But if you're someone who has trouble making that conversion of all that sugar into fat, and that's another theme I'm trying to figure out how to teach better. It's that sugar turns to fat. I mean, just look. I mean, if you've been eating a portion of your daily calories is carbs, but we store fat, that carb has to be turned to fat. You're not storing extra carbs. Carbs as a storage form in our body is really very limited. So if you're not able to make that fat from that sugar, then it gets kind of slogs around in the blood, and that's called diabetes. Some experts even kind of argue that or rationalize that growing obese, being able to turn that extra sugar and carbs, because starches get digested to sugar, it's all carbs. If you're able to make fat really well, it's protective from getting that elevated blood glucose, or protective of getting diabetes. Now that's kind of the arguing teleologically, but there is that phenomenon of some people develop diabetes at younger ages and lower weights. And, as a general kind of, if you're Asian, you tend to develop diabetes earlier, Indian and Asian. If you're Caucasian, you tend to, at earlier weights, you're able to make more fat before you start getting diabetic. But that personal fat threshold kind of explains why there are differences in some people get the metabolic problem of diabetes and others don't.
And you could probably make the argument too. You mentioned getting diabetes, getting overweight as a protective mechanism. I would also add to that too, that showing that sign that you are gaining weight and you're becoming obese could be a clue that could be helpful for people knowing they have a metabolic problem, versus the person who's skinny and goes on for years and years thinking they're healthy, but doesn't have that sign to show them what's going on.
As the last 10, 15 years, what I observe is that there's a tolerance of higher weights than happened in my age or when I was growing up. And there's a balance. I mean, it's terrible to have fat shaming. It's awful, and it can really destroy children's lives. On the other hand, there's a kind of a pushback of, for example, if you lived in Europe, in some countries, the social pressure to be skinny is so strong. I mean, there still is a lot of fat shaming and all that. But if there's an acceptance, and when someone's growing up, I just remember a young woman in her 20s who she really didn't have any idea that she was overweight, because all of the other people that she was growing up with were also overweight. And it was a shock when diabetes showed up. But actually, so the tolerance and awareness and acceptance has a double-edged sword. But if at the same time, there's research that the scientist claims is being suppressed, where she actually looks at data sets and finds that you want to be a little bit heavy for long term, longevity. You don't want to be super skinny. And I mean, it kind of makes sense, but the powers that be don't want that information be published. And she claimed even that there was censorship of that. So I don't know that anyone knows the ideal weight. And it's a balance of, are you able to do what you want to do? Are you happy? Are you? But there's some people who are such a gradual thing. I guess like when the frog, the temperature in the water goes up really slowly, it doesn't have an awareness of it. That you might have shortness of breath, and you think you don't know why it is, and it may be because of the weight, and you might not have really been told that it was a medical issue. It's an interesting time that way, and it's a tough discussion to have with some people because I come at it from a health standpoint, not an image. If someone came in loving cigarettes, and I'd say, well, look, it's killing you. We got it. So everyone accepts that. Someone comes in loving bread, and I say, well, yeah, but or recently it was a woman from Africa and rice. So I can't give up rice. I'm African. I was like, well, no, it's okay. We'll talk about other options to have, or at least minimize the amount. But a lot of talking about food and nutrition in social cultures, and a lot of people take it quite personally when all I'm trying to do is teach how our body works,
And part of the story too, say this person here with the rice, they may have to give it up initially when we're in that 20 grams of carbs phase, the first phase, but there's also 2 other phases in the book. And if people get metabolically healthy, maybe they could move on to phase 2 or phase 3, where there is more relaxation in the realm of carbs. So it might just be a temporary thing to get your health back, and then you can pivot.
Exactly. And that usually unfolds, as I start teaching a little bit about what I want someone to do. You mean I'll never be able to have rice ever again? No, we're not going to lock you up in a prison and never let you have carbs or rice. But if you go back to the way you were eating that got you here, it's just a matter of time until you get back to where you are metabolically. And weight is just one example or one consequence of that metabolism. And yeah, it's confusing because not everyone has the same metabolism, even within the same family, and it's kind of classic that the joke is, did you hear about the woman who went on the keto diet? Yeah, and her husband lost 20 pounds. Because it seems to work faster initially for men than women, but in the long run, it still works. It's just the giving up rice for that, 6 months seems insurmountable, or for however long someone needs to do it. But knowing that it's a temporary thing, and then, getting someone to just try it for a day. I'll often negotiate for the 20 gram phase 1 approach. Negotiate just one day because the hunger goes down so much. But you have a little bit of oatmeal or grits or toast or a smoothie in the morning, and poof, you're not a fat burner anymore. That insulin goes up, turns off the fat burning.
If you enjoyed that clip, press here for the full episode. I'll see you over there.
I've had people, even if they've been on insulin for 20 years, get off the insulin in as little as 8 weeks. The weight loss happens about 1 to 2 pounds per week. My philosophy is to get it to work the first time.